All right, so welcome to everyone onto our Zoom chat this evening. I think most of you have definitely heard my voice enough over the past few weeks, so I'm going to get started by letting Arin introduce herself. We have our chat feature open. I know Arin really does like to use the chat, so if you have any questions that you didn't manage to send me before via email, please feel free to add your questions into there, and we'll pick out some of the best ones at the end. So, Arin, I'm just going to let you talk for a couple of minutes. Just give us a bit of a background on yourself before we start into it all.
Okay. Hi, everybody. How is everyone? Good, I hope. I know no one can talk back right now because your microphones are muted. But for those of you that don't know or weren't at the practice that I was at, my name is Arin Wright. I just had a birthday. Fun fact, my birthday's on Christmas. So I just turned 28 years old. I play for the Chicago Red Stars. So if you haven't been to a game, you guys should definitely come. So a little bit about me. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about where I started, where I grew up, and then all the way up to high school right now. So I actually grew up in Lexington, Kentucky. So it's not too far away. I'm sure you guys have heard of the Kentucky Derby, where they race all the horses. That's where I grew up. So I grew up there, and I started actually playing soccer when I was 4 years old. I'm sure some of you guys maybe started then, or maybe you started later. But I started playing for just a local AYSO team. And I actually ended up playing with boys. So I played on a boys team until I was 10 years old, which is a little different. But when I was growing up, there weren't a lot of girls that played soccer. So the only team I could get on was a boys team. So I played on the boys team until I was about 10 years old, and I loved it. The boys gave me a run for my money, and they made me super competitive. And then when I was, I think 11 years old, they finally were like, okay, I think you need to play for a girls team now. So I transferred over to a girls team, and my club was called Lexington FC Football Club, and they're still around. But I played for them until I was about 16. And when I was 16, that team actually folded. So I didn't have a team to play for at all when I was 16. So I actually drove from Kentucky all the way to a different state. And I drove to Ohio just to play soccer for a club team. And I played for them from U16 to U18. So that was kind of like my club soccer career. But all throughout high school, I didn't just play soccer. I played basketball, I ran track, I ran cross country, and I played for the tennis team. So I kind of did a little bit of everything. But soccer ended up being my one true love, and that's what I stuck with. So that's a little bit about me. I was a forward. I started out as a sweeper, so a center back, and then all through high school, I played forward. And now I actually play defense. So I've done a little bit of everything. The only thing I haven't done is goalie.
How long did you have to drive when you played in Ohio?
So my team practiced every single day of the week. My parents could only take me 3 days a week. So I went to 3 out of the 5 trainings we had a week, and it was a 2-hour drive.
2 hours one way?
2 hours one way. And we used to train people in Ohio. They still play soccer when it's really cold outside. Like, they don't go indoors. So our coach made us bring a shovel to practice, and we would have to shovel the snow off the field before practice.
Oh, these guys got very lucky, because that was up to me and Coach Alan, Coach Rico, and Coach Gavin and John last week. We managed to get outside last week, and we were doing that for the guys.
So you shoveled it? You guys should really thank them, because I used to have to do that myself before practice, and our coach would just sit there and watch.
I would love to have done that, but I'm not sure we'd have got any of the kids to do it, to be fair.
It ended up being kind of fun. We would do like snowball fights and whatnot for warm up. So
that would be quite good fun. So when you played high school in Kentucky, did you play for high school and your club team?
Yeah. So I know that's changed a little bit now, and not everyone can play for their high school, but for me, we were still able to play for a high school team, and I absolutely loved playing for my high school team. So I did both. And it worked out that actually a girl on my team's dad was my coach, and she played on my club team as well. So he made sure our practices didn't interfere with each other. Yeah. So I got to be at every practice for high school and every practice for soccer. And I just played soccer 24/7, honestly, throughout high school.
That's great.
Yeah.
So our first question we had from our group is from Sternich. She's on our 2005 Showcase Girls team. And she wanted to know, did you get recruited to go to college, or did you have to try out? What was the process for you?
Okay. So the process is actually it's very different for everyone. So my experience might not be the same for someone else. But for me, yes, I was recruited. However, it wasn't easy for me. So I grew up in a state that soccer wasn't very big. I told you guys it kind of folded for girls when I was 16 years old. So for me, when I first started looking at colleges, which was around 16 years old, maybe 15 years old, I was going to tournaments in different states, which I'm sure some of you guys do. You might go, or even in the same state, whatever tournament I went to, whatever school was near where our games were, me and my mom and my dad, we would go to those campuses and we would just kind of look around the campus. And if I liked it and I looked at the school and I was interested, I would actually shoot that coach an email just to kind of get myself on their radar. But then kind of as I went up to U17, U18, I started to get a little bit more interest from some coaches. And what they would do, they would just send you an email, and invite you to their camps for whatever school it might be. But they're also, depending on the club you're in, we were in the ECNL. So there would be like tournaments where college coaches would come and watch those tournaments. And I always made sure, and I would get really nervous for those tournaments because all those people are watching. So that's kind of how I got seen, was through that. And I ended up going on I think 4 official visits and tons of unofficial visits. And then I think there were probably at least 12 schools that I just walked around by myself and made up my own visit with my mom and dad. Which was, honestly, it was a really good, I hated it. My mom was like, you have to do this. And I was like, no, Mom, I really don't want to. Let's just go to the movie theater, while we're on the soccer tournament, do something fun. And she'd be like, no, we're going to go to the school. And at the time, it wasn't the best thing in the world that I wanted to do, or the most thing that I was excited for. But looking back now, it was a really good thing that we did, because I got to see a lot more schools than I would have had I not done that, which I recommend. When you guys are looking at schools, don't get stuck on one school. Look at a school you wouldn't even think about, because you might be surprised on what you find.
I think for our younger players that might not know a lot about this, we've just taken our older groups to North Carolina to the tournament at Raleigh. So we did that last year. We did it this year. Obviously, this year was slightly different. Last year was really cool because they were playing the Division I tournament there, and we got to see North Carolina versus Michigan, which was a great, real high-level game for someone to go and watch. So it was a great eye opener for that group. So for the younger girls and boys on the call, you will get that to look forward to as we go through.
The Raleigh tournament, I went to that one a lot.
Can you tell us a little bit about? It was a lot of fun. We really, really enjoyed that. Can you tell us a little bit about the college that you went to and your kind of your daily routine when you were at college?
Yeah,
quite an interesting.
So I went to the University of Kentucky, go Wildcats, and so kind of your daily routine when you're an athlete, it's very regimented. It's like you've got a schedule every single day from 6 a.m. to usually 6 p.m. So they kind of set you up with an advisor, an athletic advisor, and that advisor will kind of point you in the direction. So you'll kind of pick a subject or a major that you want to major in and that you're interested in studies. And they'll help you kind of manage your course load, and they'll show you what classes to kind of go to do. And you'll usually do, I think it's about 16 hours a semester. Some are on quarters. My school was on semesters. And within that, so you would wake up in the morning. So let me give you a typical day. So you would wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. And we would go and we would do our running at our indoor facility. And after our running, we would then go to our lifting. And then after that, there was all these different like hubs within the campus that you could go get your breakfast at. Me and my best friend Emma lived together, and we loved Chick-fil-A breakfast in college. We had a Chick-fil-A on our campus, so we would go and we get Chick-fil-A. And then after that, I had 3 classes in a row. So I would have to shower really quick at our locker room, and I would have to go to 3 classes in a row after that. And then I would have like a tiny little break. And in that break, I would usually take a nap because I was exhausted. And then later on that day, I would have training. And our training was about 2 hours. And then after that, I actually had another class. And after that, you had to do a thing when you're an athlete at certain schools. They have a thing called quiet study. And it's actually study hours that they schedule in for you. So during your entire duration of a week, say you're studying for all these different classes, you have to get at least 6 hours of study hall. So you have to be in that room studying for at least 6 hours total in that week. So that would be like a normal day. And then they had this really cool thing, which is like training table. So imagine like you guys go to a buffet, like to eat. That's kind of like what it was for athletes. So it was all healthy food. So they have like all really good meats, all really good vegetables, and you could just go in, all the athletes could go in and get your meal. And take it. You could either take it home and eat it in your dorm or your apartment, wherever you lived, or you could eat it there with all the other athletes. And there were 3 different locations that you could do that at our college. So that was kind of like a typical day for me.
So we had a really good question from one of our older players. And she said that, has there ever been a time that you thought that it was getting too hard or too much, or that you weren't getting anywhere, or have any particular stresses? Maybe your team weren't being nice to you and you wanted to quit. Was there any time that you felt like that going through your college time?
Yeah, there's definitely one that I can pick out in college. So for me, I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard about people tearing their ACL, but I actually did that. So what was going on in my life is, so when I was, I think I was 16 years old, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and she was diagnosed in stage 4. And the doctor didn't really give her a lot of time to live, which is why I ended up really choosing Kentucky, because I wanted to be close to home. So during that, she ended up living all the way until I got to college. But right when I started college and I played 1 year, I actually tore my ACL. So I was battling with all this, with my mom being sick. I had torn my ACL. And in that time, I also was playing for the U20 national team. So I was supposed to be going to a World Cup that year. So I had all these different things on my plate that I was dealing with, and I was very emotionally overwhelmed. And I was also very bummed that I wasn't going to get to go to the U20 national team World Cup. So it was during that period that after I tore my ACL, was telling my dad, I don't think I can come back and play. Like it's just too much, I'm in college now and I've torn my ACL. I don't think I can come back from this, even though my dream was to play professionally. So I ended up going home. What ended up being like what I thought was the worst thing in the world ended up being the biggest blessing, because I got to spend that entire time recovering from my ACL with my mom right before she passed away. And so I ended up coming out stronger, because I found a new love for soccer, because now I wanted to play soccer for her. Rather than it wasn't just for me. So it was me and her. And so that kind of almost relit my spark for the game. And so I had to go through all that, I think, to find the player that I am now, because I am a totally different player having gone through all of that than I was before. So whether your circumstance is a little bit smaller than that, and maybe it's as big as that, use that and learn from that and almost harbor it and try and invest it into the way that you play, because it can change you as a player for the better. And that's what I let it do for me.
I think that's a really nice answer. I think that's definitely something a lot of people may not have ever been through or likely to go through, but I think that's a really nice way of helping people out with that. I like that. So start to tell me about your experience as a pro. Talk about the draft, because I know the draft's coming up soon for the end of the season.
Yeah. So I guess I'll talk to you a little bit about the draft for me. So what's crazy about all of this and being a professional now is when I was your guys' age, there wasn't even a professional women's soccer team here in the United States. So I never even thought that I could play professionally in my own country. I thought I was planning, to go overseas and play. But then I think a little bit later on, it was established. The NWSL was established because there was a league before that, but it folded, and so it wasn't around. So then the NWSL was established, and once I think it wasn't until like my sophomore year, I was like, man, I think I might actually be able to like maybe give it a run. Being a pro, I might be decent enough that I can actually sign up for this draft. So it was around my sophomore year that I really decided, I'm going to go for it. I'm really going to chase this dream. And I applied for the draft. I think you apply your June, the end of your actually it changed this year because of COVID, but the end of your senior year, you usually apply after you play your last season. And then the draft happens usually in January or February of the next year. And I remember it being for me, it was so nerve-wracking because you apply, but you don't really know. So what actually happened for me is Rory, who's our head coach here, I got a call maybe like 6 days before the draft. And he was like, hey, Arin, this is Coach Dames. And I was like, I was senior in high school, not like wanting to be pro, but hadn't been drafted yet. My heart's like racing. And he's like, I just wanted to let you know, you're on our radar, and, we're really thinking about bringing you in one of our picks. So, that only escalated my anxiety for leading up to the draft. So then I was actually in Maui when the draft happened. I didn't go to the draft because I had already planned this trip before they announced the date, and I wasn't going to skip out on a trip to Hawaii. So, so I was in Maui, and I woke up at 3 a.m., I think, for the draft with all my aunts and uncles. They were with me, and we were watching. And Rory had actually told me that he was thinking about maybe around the 5th pick in the first round. And so it rolled around to like the 5th pick in the first round, and he didn't call my name. He called Stephanie McCaffrey's name. And I just started crying because I was like, I'm not going to get picked. Like, I don't know. And then it ended up being the 8th pick. He waited until the 8th pick because he ended up trading Stephanie away for other things that he picked me up. And I just remember being so excited and just not really knowing what my future would hold, and just, I was leaving Kentucky, my hometown, which I hadn't really left, and I was going to move to Chicago, where you guys all live. And I was so excited because you hear about how cool Chicago is, which it is everything and more that everyone talks it up to be. I absolutely love it here. So that was kind of my experience leading up to the draft. It's very nerve-wracking. But every year the draft is so cool just for players that have even been in the league. Because like afterwards, I knew all the younger players growing up. And so every year I know draft's going to happen, and I'm like almost like sitting there like, okay, I think this person's going to go, and I think this person's going to go. So I'm like making up my own draft and who's going to choose who in my own head.
That's so cool. I mean,
yeah,
I got to experience going to a live draft in 2017, I think, when the convention was in LA, and I got to look at it that way. And having not ever seen anything like that, because it's not the way things were done in Europe, it was a very cool concept to me. And it's really nice to hear like your views on it from being inside it and the emotions that you went through. So that's a really cool thing. So I know we had talked about this at the practices that you came out and you coached. Can you tell us a little bit about your favorite practice or activity that you did when you were younger?
Okay, so for those of you that were at my practice, you should know what my favorite drill is. So I want to see if anyone drops it in here real quick before I tell you. You've got like 5 seconds until I tell you. So if anyone does it, I'm going to give you a shout out. If you know how to put it in the chat, you press the chat thing and then you just type it in there. But I'm gonna give you like 5 more seconds to answer. Anyone? Come on. There was running involved. It was the drill. I'll give you guys a hint. It was the one that I did. You guys remember what it was called? Pass and go? No. You guys are close? Okay, I'm going to tell you for the sake of time. Okay, it was the Mario Kart. You guys were close. So yeah, through the gate. Through the gate. Chris Larocco? Is that how you say your name? You got it. So basically that was my favorite game because it was almost like I was in a real game of Mario, and it incorporated, I like trying to run as fast as you could get there, clear the ball. But then on the other side, it incorporated possession. So it kind of had a little bit of everything. I also loved, because who doesn't love shooting? Everyone loves shooting. Yeah. And I'm sure you guys have played this because everyone plays this, Power and Finesse. Give me a head shake if you guys have played Power and Finesse. Yeah. Yeah. So that was probably one of my favorites. We always played that. I'm not so much on my club team, but on my high school team, every day of practice ended with Power and Finesse, and it was the best thing. And we also played a version. I don't know if you guys have played the version where you become the keeper. Have you done that? Like you shoot and then you become the keeper. Oh, I loved that, but I hated that because I'm a terrible keeper. So those are my favorite drills.
So we have, so we play like a version called Lightning. I know a few of the players have played Power and Finesse. I used to love Power and Finesse as well. That was always a fun game for me. I mean, I still like playing it now if I can.
Yeah, I know. We even play it sometimes with the Red Stars. At practice, we'll be like, it's not part of the coaches. They won't set it up, but they're like, okay, but you guys can do it on your own time. So we'll stay late at practice and do it.
I think that's always fun for people to know as well, that when you do get to your pro level, you can still have fun in your practices. It's not always just the tactical hard component. I think a lot of people sometimes are scared that it's always just going to be that the whole time and the fun side goes. But
no, it's even when you get pro guys, like you still joke around, you do still try and neg each other at practice. We still try and neg our coaches at practice when they're not paying attention in between drills. It's fun. And what's really cool is like we share out at Toyota Park, we share a training facility with the fire, and sometimes like the fire train before us and we train after them. And a lot of times there'll be like, they're coming off the field and they're doing their cool down, we're coming on. And sometimes we'll play little games like Bash and Schweinsteiger sometimes would play like some little games with us because he thought it was fun to mess around and play. So it's not just our team that we would get to kind of mess around with, it was the guys too. So it's a fun, soccer is just so fun because it brings so many different people together. And you meet so many different people on so many other teams. Like we have friends on every single team in the league, which I think someone asked a question about that, didn't they?
They did. We had a couple of people say that. So it said, how does it feel when you play against people you know or that you've played with in a different environment? So if you're playing on like the national team, for example, how did it feel to then come up against that player that you know and you're friends with in a competitive game?
Okay, so I've got 2 stories for you guys. So I'll tell you about my first time in the league. So my first game I ever played in the league. It was my rookie season. And I remember I didn't start that game. My coach subbed me in, I think, right before halftime or at halftime. And he said, all right, I'm throwing you in the fire. You get to mark Tobin Heath. And I'm over here like, what? Just straight out of college, and my one duty was to mark Tobin Heath, and she wasn't allowed to score. And he basically made it sound like if she got by me, I was going to be benched. So I was like really, really stressed about it. Because if you guys have ever watched any interviews, Tobin is like one of my favorite players. I think she's so crafty and just awesome. And of course, the first person I have to defend is her. So that was super nerve-wracking, but I ended up doing awesome. She didn't score any goals. She stayed on the sideline. She definitely got by me a few times, but it was really fun. So that was my first experience playing against a national team player. And it was really cool, coming in from college and, the people I idolized growing up as a player, Like there was Shannon Box. I'm not sure if you guys know who she is, but she was now my teammate, which was so weird and surreal. It was like I had to talk to her like a friend, but like I low-key just idolized her all the time. So I had to play it really cool. So that was very interesting. And then just a different side of it. So now that I've been in the league for 7 years, I have so many friends within the league. And what's good about that is a lot of them I've played on their team before. So that means I know all their tricks. I know their favorite moves. I know their favorite foot, which foot they like to dribble with, which foot they like to shoot with. So honestly, the more people you know in the league, the better it is for you because you get to learn how they play. So it makes it easier to defend them. Or if you're an attacker, to kind of go against them. And honestly, for the people that I don't know very well, a lot of the time we watch a lot of film on players. So when it's a game, like, so I've never played on a team with Megan Rapinoe. I don't know her very well. Like I know her, just we would say hi because we've obviously played in the same league together, but we're not like super close because I've just never had the opportunity to get close with her. But because of that, I don't know her mannerisms as well. I only know from playing against her. And so what my coach did was he actually cut a bunch of clips from all of her games and he kind of mashed them together so that I could watch her when she takes people on 1v1 and kind of tendencies that she has. So when I play against her, it makes it a little bit easier for me to defend her because I can kind of guess what she might do. So I would say, I know film isn't very fun, but it's very beneficial for players to do that because it makes it your job easier once you get on the field.
That's good. Can you tell us a little bit about your time playing abroad as well?
Oh, yes. Love it. Okay. So I've actually played abroad twice. One was, so there was a league. This was actually when it wasn't for a professional team. It was a semi-pro team, but this was when I was in college before I even went to the NWSL. So I played for a team called the Ottawa Fury, which was in Canada. And I did that in a summer. I think it was my junior summer of college. And that was so fun. It was really cool to go up there and just be in it was my first time really I'd been to other countries, but really living in another country. And it was Canada, so it wasn't too far. And like they spoke English. Certain territories spoke French, Canadian French, but where I was in Ottawa, majority of people spoke English. So it was an easy transition. And I made some lifelong friends there. Actually, one of the girls that was on my team is actually in our league now, Shalina Zardowski. She plays for Orlando. I think she's over actually playing for Tottenham currently. But so that was very interesting. But my favorite experience was I got loaned 3 times to go play in Australia. And I played for the Newcastle Jets. And it was the most fun experience of my whole life. And I think I've got some of the best memories of all of my soccer career there. So what I actually did when I got loaned, so they sent me over there and they can have 4 international players on a team. So everyone else on the team is Australian. And then there were 4, we actually had 4 Americans. You can have any other, like it could be, it can be a Japanese player, it can be an English player, whoever, but our team just happened to have 4 Americans. And I actually ended up living with a host family, which I was very nervous about at first. And I lived there for 3 seasons. So I played a season there, played a season in the NWSL, went to Australia, played a season, came back, went back, came back, went back. And so my first season, I lived with a family that was, the wife was my age, which was really cool. So it was almost like living with like a friend. So that was a cool experience because they introduced me to all their friends, and I really just got to like really live the Australian lifestyle, which is just really laid back. They love to surf. There's kangaroos and koalas everywhere, and and I'm there in summer, so it's like almost 100 degrees, 105 degrees. It was just amazing, and they love soccer over there. So like they like cannot wait for the games. The stadiums were packed. Like it is their main sport. So it was very fun. And then the next 2 years I lived with the same family, and they were absolutely amazing. Their names were the Terrys. And they had a son that loved soccer, and he was 12 years old. And it's crazy because now he's like almost like an adult, and it's so weird. Like I'll FaceTime them and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're not a kid anymore. Like you're a grown man. But it was my experience playing in Australia. What was cool about it is the Australians have a different style than Americans. So what's interesting to go play in different countries is every country, kind of the style of soccer is different than in the US. So I feel like in the US, we're very athletic driven. Everyone's super fast. Everyone's like, the games played more like this, back and forth. And in Australia, it was more, it's almost like their mannerisms. It's more lax and more relaxed, and you take your time and you do your technique well. And everyone's super clean technically. And it was just, I learned a lot from them on the field and off the field, and I would not trade that experience. Honestly, I would move back there. Like if I ended my career, I could see myself moving there because I loved it so much.
Nice. So I have a good question here. Actually comes from one of our coaches. So many younger girls seem to avoid contact within games. Could you share with us some of what we would call the dark arts, like using your hands, body, shirt pulls, there's types of stuff that happen in games that maybe people don't see as much because they may have not watched a lot of soccer games before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 100% there is a ton of contact in soccer. And I will tell you guys someone that every single person on this whole board will know when I say her name. Her name is Alex Morgan. And let me tell you, she loves loves contact in a game that is not allowed. So like whenever you're playing or you're like doing corners with her. So whenever you're doing a corner, you want to fight someone for your position, right? Like you want to own your space so that you can win the ball in your area, right? So what she does, and she's really good about it and really sneaky about it, and honestly, it's beneficial. She will grab and hold on almost to like your hip or where your pants are and hold straight down so that when you're trying to move with her, you can't move, like you're kind of stuck. So there is a lot of contact, and like, don't be afraid of contact. I think I trained Audrey, wherever you are, I see you. I've trained her and I taught her, when you are going against someone, when you have your hand here, this is not a foul. Okay. You are protecting your body and protecting and shielding the ball by having your arms up. This is not a foul. So when you're dribbling or you're jumping up for a header, you're doing anything, try and make it a habit to always have your arms out to hold people off. You want to protect your space. You're not just protecting the ball, you're protecting your space. Okay. And this is a foul. If you push your hand all the way out, that is going to be a foul. But the biggest thing in this league, and I had to learn that coming in, because in college, it's not quite as physical as it is professionally. Like professionally, it's very physical. I've been thrown around quite a few times in this league, and you've got to learn to hold your own, and you've got to be able to hold people off, and you can't be afraid of someone tackling you, because when you are afraid, that's when you're going to get hurt. If you go into something saying, I'm going to win this, and you go in full force, you're usually going to come out of it okay. So my biggest thing for you guys is don't go into a tackle scared. Don't go into whatever it is scared. Protect yourself and keep your arms up. That is my biggest, when I coach people, your forearm, you want to keep that stiff all the time. So that's a little bit of touch on that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good answer. I hope that the girls especially were listening to that, because those are some really, really good ideas on how to do that. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to give everyone the chance to ask a question in the chat. So if you have any other questions, you've got 2 or 3 minutes to put them in, because I'm going to ask one more question that I really want to ask, and then I want to pick a couple from you guys. So the last one that I was going to ask you, and this is going to be a little bit more important to our older groups, but I think everyone will need to hear it. What about your diet right now? How do you prepare for games? How do you refuel post games? And how hard is it to stick to that diet?
Okay, so I will tell you, when I was younger, I was not good about my diet. I used to be the kid that would be like, "Hey, Dad, can we go get McDonald's before the soccer game? I want a Big Mac." And my dad, not knowing, would get me the Big Mac. It wasn't until college when we started having training table. Actually, I think I ended up, so I forgot to tell you guys this. I graduated high school early. So I only went to high school for 3 years. And I actually went to college early. So it was what it would have been my last year in high school. So my senior year that I really started paying attention to my diet. And let me tell you, it made such a difference. I used to, when I was younger, would put Mountain Dew in my water bottle when my parents weren't looking. But now, and starting in my senior year of high school, this is going to sound really boring to you guys, but only meats I eat I'll eat other things randomly, but my normal on Monday through Friday, I eat either chicken or ground turkey, very lean meats. And then I always have a veggie. So I usually have kale or, Brussels sprouts. I love Brussels sprouts, lima beans, things like that. And I usually will have, depending if I have a game or not, I will like bulk up on some rice or some pasta, depending on if it's a day before a game. I definitely have rice or pasta because that gives me enough fuel for the next day. But if I don't, and it's just training, I only eat chicken or ground turkey. And honestly, I pre-cook all my meals. So I have like them set up ready to eat them. So I'll have like lunch and dinner. And breakfast every single day for me is eggs. I eat 2 eggs every single morning with some cheese in it. And so for us post practice, so I practice every single day and we have lifting. After every practice, I have a smoothie with protein powder in it so that those muscles that I deteriorated during practice, I can build them back up. So that I get, it's only a small one too. It's only a smoothie about this big. And during practice, I actually drink electrolytes so that my body doesn't like lose a lot of fluids. Because when you're practicing, you're sweating a ton and all of that. So you're losing all your fluids and you need to replenish that somehow. So the best way to do it for me is to do it while I'm playing because I'm really bad about drinking water throughout the day. That is like kind of my New Year's resolution is to drink more water. Because water is the best thing you can put in your body. So that is kind of my daily routine before a game. So our team, when we're away, we always order food from, it's been Cheesecake Factory as of lately. Rory is very superstitious. So we always get the same, we eat at the same places if we're winning. So Cheesecake Factory was a big one. And so actually what I would get as my pregame meal, and I would get steak because I wanted a heavier load. So I would get steak with rice and I got the carne asada from Cheesecake. So you guys can look that up. It's great. I advise getting it. And then after games, we always have Chipotle or sometimes pizza because after games, if there's one time that you guys can eat whatever you want, it's after a game because you need to refuel your body and it's okay to put in a few bad things here and there.
We have one question with what was your favorite number when you played in elementary school?
Okay, so my favorite number, and I was so sad. I was the same number all the way through college. Oh, look at that Wright jersey. I like that. My favorite number all through high school was 16. However, when I came to Chicago, my best friend on the team had 16. Her name was Samantha Johnson. She's no longer with the Red Stars. She actually retired and came out of retirement, is now playing over in Australia. And so actually what's funny is 16 is now available and I can't take it because I've now been 3 for 7 years and I cannot change it. So my favorite number was 16, but I guess now it has to be 3. So yeah. I see a good question over here. And can I answer it?
Yeah, pick the ones you want to answer.
Okay, so Peggy, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the last name because I will do a very bad job. But you asked, during quarantine, was it hard for you to be motivated on your own time to practice in isolation? So that's a great question. And for me, it was very hard. So for those of you that don't know and that weren't there and didn't meet me, I had a baby back in April. So it has been even harder for me to come back and start playing again. So getting motivated to play in isolation when everyone's staying at home, I was like, well, I could just stay here and watch Netflix. But what was great is my husband actually played soccer in college at Kalamazoo. So he was a great training partner for me, and he honestly motivated me to get out of the house. And we would take my baby and we would go down to the park that's close to our house here in Naperville. And we would train out at that turf field, and he would train me, and we would set my baby off in the stroller. And so that actually gave me a lot of motivation. And what's even cooler is some of you guys asked if I had another job other than soccer. And I actually do. I train kids for private sessions. And I actually met some awesome kids that I train while I was out there training myself. So I made some really cool connections while I was out there doing that. So that's a great question, because it's really hard when I'm sure for you guys too, during quarantine, it was hard, like I'm sure just to do schoolwork or to do whatever, just focus when you're inside all day long and not being able to get out. So yes, it was just as hard for us as athletes to, get motivated to do that, because we didn't know what our season looked like. We ended up doing a bubble, but even right now we're like waiting to hear kind of what is forecasted for our season. We've got a call this week. We're all super anxious because we're like, what's going to happen? So great question.
I like this one from Gina. Knowing what you know now, would you go back and change anything you did throughout your career?
That's a great question. I always say that I would have liked to branch out outside of Kentucky. So I think had my situation with my mom been different, I think I might have, only because I loved going to school at Kentucky. It was a great school. But I think it would have been cool to branch out and, live in a different state and kind of get away from home in that period and try and just learn to be independent and live in a different place on my own. So I don't know if I would change it, because I like how my life turned out was, the way it was supposed to be, but it would have been interesting to try a different state. I also, something for you guys, what I really hated when I would play or practice, I hated doing technical work. Oh, when you're just sitting with a cone and a ball by yourself, and it would just get so boring. All I wanted to do was play possession or play games or small-sided games and stuff like that, because that's the fun stuff, right? I wish I would have taken more interest in the technical stuff and doing little things on my own in the garage or out in the field, because honestly, that once you get to the next level is like really needs to be fine-tuned. And I had to learn to do that later in my career. Whereas if I had done it earlier, around the age that you guys are, it would have already been, pretty fine-tuned, and I wouldn't have had to work as hard at it. It just kind of would have been second nature. Whereas I kind of really put myself in a bad spot and had to learn how to be super technical later on. So I wish I would have done more of those drills when I was younger.
Nice. I like that answer. All right. So I'm going to leave on this last question from Maggie, who said, who are your favorite teammates that you've played with?
Oh gosh, my favorite teammates that I've played with. So I told you my best friend that I've made while I was playing soccer was Sam Johnson. She played for the Red Stars. Some of my favorite people I've played with quite a few people. So I don't know if you guys, or is anyone familiar with any of the Australian national team players? But one of my favorite players and people that I played with them was Sam Kerr. I absolutely loved her. And Nikki Stanton, who, this is so exciting because we just found out today, Nikki Stanton was one of my best friends on the team, and she's coming back to Chicago. So she's just signed a new deal with the team, and she will be here for this season, which is exciting. And actually, Emily Van Egmont, she plays for Orlando, and she plays for the Australian national team. And she is one of my very good friends. And I'm trying to think a player that I really idolized. I know you didn't ask that question, but a player that I idolized that I played with was, I'm not sure if you guys will know her, but her name was Lori Kolepny. And she was on the national team for a little bit. And she just works so hard day in and day out. And she is just a phenomenal player in person all around. She's actually retired now. But she was someone I really looked up to on our team. And she was just a great human. So I think there's so many other players that I have like really good friends, but those are the top ones off the top of my head that I can think of.
Cool. Well, I think that's all the questions we had. I think you've answered pretty much everything there. Just leave it and say thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to do this with us. I hope the players on the court has enjoyed it as much as I have. It's been a really, really nice evening. So thank you so much for coming out and doing this with us.
Yeah, no problem. I hope you guys had fun. I know there's so many questions I probably didn't get to answer, but honestly, just seeing all your guys' faces on here and the fact that you guys wanted to get on this call and hear, what I had to talk to you guys about is just as cool as it is for you guys. It's that cool for me. So if you guys ever want to reach out or you want to come to a game, just let your coach know. He'll shoot me a message and maybe we can work something out where you guys come out to a game. I'd love to see you. But stay safe, stay healthy, and I can't wait to see you guys again soon when I come out to a training.
Thanks, Arin. We'll see you soon.
Yeah. Bye, guys.